Have this done by 7:50.
Hmm?
We can have this done by 7:50.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Everybody's having a good time chatting. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the regular meeting of council of February 21st. Council, we have an amended agenda in front of us, all 200 and some odd pages, some additions recently. Council, call the meeting to order, any concerns, conflicts? Not, motion to adopt and seconded, all in favor? Carried. No delegations, and so we can go right to the Sunshine Coast Tourism Grant Application, item 5.1 on page 3 of our both agendas. Won't say that very often after this. So anybody got any comments or questions? Anybody like to, I beg your pardon? Out of practice.
To the chair. I just was wondering, I don't know if I see it in here. Do we know the cost of installing this door?
I don't think we do.
Dave?
Oh,
Or that
maybe
director?
we do. Please.
Thank you, Your Worship. We have had some preliminary cost estimates based on other doors that have been installed, and they're well within the limit of the total grant that they would be applying for.
Great.
Oh.
So there's no exposure beyond the letter of support.
Super, that was my next question. Thank you, Carrie Ann.
Okay, somebody like to? Moved and seconded. This is the recommendation on page 3. Any discussion? I will call the question. All in favor? Carried. And then go to the DP 2022-29 for 5535 Shorncliffe. This being Generis property. And council, how do you? I guess we can ask Mr. Hall, sitting there. Is there anything you want to add to your report, Mr. Hall?
Not at this time. I can pull up some drawings or renderings if council has any questions or wants to look at anything in particular, but otherwise, report is ready for your.
Great. Councillor Shepherd.
Thanks to the chair. I think that the last issue that I thought was being sorted out between the developer and staff was it the arrangement of the entry road onto the site? There was some, it was going back and forth, and I just wonder what the final result was. Thanks.
Yes, that was discussed internally, and also then we provided some direction and comments back to the applicant, and they provided us revised drawings, which are incorporated into this development permit, where they have realigned a section of the road to address the issues around tree protection on the Rockwood property. So that issue in terms of the development permit drawings has been addressed, and we're generally in support of what they've done. So they've met our goals.
Sorry, I couldn't hear that. You're generally supportive? Is
Yeah.
it? Yeah, thank you. Is that? Tell you what, Councillor Bell, could you turn your microphone on, please? No. Please. No questions.
Yes, please.
Please, Councillor Inkster.
Yeah, thank you. I don't know that the question previously was about tree protection. It was about how they would access the property in terms of our land, et cetera, and the other choices that we may have an effect on neighboring properties. So I'm just looking for that in here. As you may recall, the Mr. Hall, the question I had about access.
Yeah, so I guess it's both issues. There was certainly a concern about tree protection on the Rockwood. Separate from the issue of whether or not they were accessing through the Rockwood property, just the proximity of the road. And the original proposal was to remove trees on the district's property. Even if the road was just going straight through their property. So there's the tree protection side, which has been addressed by them realigning the road to allow appropriate tree protection measures to be done and protect the bulk of the trees on our property. In terms of access through the Rockwood property, at this time, that's not something that's being considered. It was floated as an idea for the future potentially, but right now, the idea has always been to have this road come through the property from Shorncliffe that would go connect through the neighboring larger property adjacent to the high school. And that would then connect through their property and potentially back down to Cowrie and Pilot Way. So the owners of that larger property are also looking at development, and we've been in touch with them over the last year with various iterations. They're aware of the development on this property and would be looking to coordinate the access road piece. So that right now, yeah, there's no access through the Rockwood contemplated at this time.
So the drawings are showing a notional idea of what it might look like, but
Yeah, the drawings show the road coming through the property, not continuing all the way to the shared property boundary. The applicant has noted that to complete the road through to the next property would require additional grading work on that other property. So there would need to be coordination between the two properties to properly develop that road, but that would be the intent, is that would continue.
so on page 80 of our amended agenda, it is possible to go straight north up to the
Yes,
northern property, straight west,
yes.
straight up. How about that? Okay. Other questions, council? Please, Councillor Tough.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm assuming that the drawings that we have in our package are not reflective of the changes that were made to the road alignment. And so I'm just wondering, like, is it like the whole driveway's been moved over away from the property line, or what are we looking at
Yeah.
here for both the buffer between Rockwood and Skakel and tree protection? Thanks.
Right, thank you. No, we got quite a bit of it given to us in the last 24 hours, so
Yeah, so this,
yes.
well, you can ignore the fact that this drawing actually does show a connection through the Rockwood property. That's not happening, but it does show where they realigned the road. So the bulk of the road is still along the property boundary, but they have veered it away from the boundary in that sort of upper middle section. And that's where the bulk of the trees were on our property that would have been impacted. So the road curves away and then curves back towards the western boundary.
I think we see it on page 89 of our amended agenda, where the drawings of the various trees and the radius. Okay. That okay, Councillor Tough? 89, yeah. Other questions, council? Councillor McLaughlin.
Yes, through the chair. I'm just wondering if the new legislation regarding STRs has any impact on this project, which had some component of STR in it.
STR?
Yeah.
It's, okay, thank you.
The only STR component is the penthouse unit at the top that the applicant is seeking to be able to short-term rental. And what we propose is that the short-term rental use would apply to that unit only, similar to how it applies in residential zones. So they'd be subject to the same provincial requirements that we have to deal with in terms of principal residency and that piece. That's how it's being currently proposed.
I'm not sure if it's just my bad hearing, but we're not hearing you that well. Huh?
Okay, how about now?
Ah, wonderful.
Yeah, so the short-term rental use proposed as part of this rezoning is only applicable to the penthouse unit. And it would be the same short-term rental use that we've applied in our residential zones, and therefore it would be subject to the provincial changes. So it would only be available for a type 1 or type 2 short-term rental use, as the type 3 will be discontinued.
So, yeah, to
Okay,
follow up,
please.
it's not their principal residence, so it would not be permitted.
They would need, the operator would need to, it would need to be the operator's principal residence in order for them to
Yeah, my
access the short-term.
understanding is that it's not.
Well,
Yeah,
it
but
hasn't been
I
built
guess
yet.
to access it, they would need to have an operator whose principal residence it was in order to be able to do that. And that's
The owner though, right?
Principle, yes.
So,
Well,
Just wonder if that is something that should be taken out then, because it doesn't appear to be in conformance. Thank you.
please, Councillor Tough.
Thank you. At this time, we're looking at the development permit, not the zoning bylaw. And I'm happy to move the recommendations that are on page 5 as presented for the development permit. Thank you.
Thank you. Is that a second, Councillor Bell? Thank you. And this is everything on page 5, 1A, B, and C. Okay, so that's moved and seconded. Further questions? Please, Councillor Inkster.
This document I was given is really unwieldy. I'm very uncomfortable right now. I can't read stuff. I'm really frustrated. Anyway, does it not say 1A adoption of zoning amendment bylaw though, as in what Councillor Toth just said though?
This is the recommendation.
Yeah.
We haven't actually gone to vote on the.
Mhm.
Well,
Yes.
just to clarify that
Yeah.
the development permit would be subject to adoption of the zoning bylaw.
Mhm.
So, yeah. The development permit itself, I'm totally fine with. I hear Councillor McLaughlin's
Mhm.
comments about the zoning bylaw.
Right. If I could just comment on that.
So you want to make sure you
I can't
want to take a
find,
minute?
well, I can't find the road. I'm okay.
Yeah.
It's just the information I have here is I
Mhm.
can't find the road and the access point, and I'm trying to find it in this document.
Look at page 80, 82, and
Okay.
87 or 9, I think. I have it on here.
Yeah, I know. Well, I was
Right.
provided with this and
Yeah.
it's the document and
No.
you show me where that is.
Right.
Yeah.
I
It's
don't
really
think
important.
the formatting isn't,
Yeah,
hasn't printed properly.
yeah.
Based on what I'm seeing.
Yeah.
We'll come back to that.
Yeah.
Councilor
Right.
McLaughlin.
Yes, I guess my concern is that what we propose here should be in conformance with what we know should be happening. And so to have that conflict is not really good practice.
Conflict in.
To have
respect of the-
SDR that is not a primary residence be part of this.
But we don't know if it's a primary residence at this
Well,
point.
I think he did tell us that it was, yes.
No, it hasn't been built yet. Nobody's occupied it.
Well, we have to take people's word too, right? The
Right.
applicant's word on this, I think is fair enough.
Yeah.
And also, I was just wanting to confirm, what are the amenity contributions for this project?
As one of the rezoning conditions is the housing agreement to secure the 11 below market rental housing units.
Was there also a density up from there, a density increase?
No. I mean, there was the OCP amendment related to the density parameters, but there was the amenity contribution was the 11 below market rental units.
Right. So at the housing conference, which I also was going to, it did point out that housing contributions and density provisions were not really part of amenity contributions legally. So even though it's done, I think it is kind of not going to happen going forward. They were very clear about that during the conference. Thank you.
Okay. All right, thank you. Getting 82, I think you'll find. Can I ask a somewhat different question on page 9, I think it is? Yes, we're still on. And this, I was curious, what water conservation approaches, where are we now with that?
The applicant is looking primarily at doing water conservation through their landscaping by promoting native drought tolerant species and really trying to reduce the outdoor water use required for irrigation.
And there's no gray water at this stage?
No, the applicant did investigate that, but decided that it was not feasible for their development.
What about things maybe on the next page under our generic or general term of social sustainability and community well-being? Are there any solar plans, EV chargers?
The zoning bylaw in the parking regulations does require a minimum number of level 2 EV chargers as part of the parking requirements. So I don't recall offhand what the calculation would be
But
for
it's-
this, but I think it's one level 2 charger for every 20 parking spaces, something like that. But it's written into the zoning bylaw, so they would have to.
Well, there are a lot of funding programs to make sure that it's more than 1 in 20, so sure the developer will be happy to avail themselves of the federal government largesse. Councillor Inkster, your microphone is on, so, no. No? Okay. Other questions? I don't want to. Unfortunately, as I say, we've got a lot of stuff that came to us today, so I don't want to rush this if council needs a minute. Okay. Not, I'll call the question. Sorry, oh, no, okay. All in favor? Opposed? Councillors Inkster and McLaughlin opposed. The motion carries. Yeah, great. Okay, we then go to page 132 of the amended agenda, which was page 11 of the original. This is for receipt of the ICSP, which we discussed at Committee of the Whole last week. I think. Seems like a long time ago, but. So council, I don't believe there's been any changes, Mr. Allen. This is.
For receipt, yes. Thank you.
Anything? So the comments that came out of last week, then, how does that get integrated into this document? It'll be in the next, it'll come back to us.
Great question. We are committed to annual reporting. We do commit to quarterly reporting on our divisional activities as a whole. But the key comment that I recall right now is, what are we going to do with this document? How are we going to use it? Are we going to renew it? At present, the official community plan is key on our forefront, whether we recognize the obvious link between the two, and engaging in the public in that longer term, bigger thinking about our town is certainly within scope of the ICSP and the OCP and what we intend on doing through 2024 and 2025. So I know it's a roundabout answer to a specific question.
So this is what we're going to get for now, and every quarter or so there'll be some comments on
Progress
status
updates.
and progress. Yeah.
Correct.
Everybody okay with that? In which case, I'll entertain a motion to receive it. Seconded, Councillor McLaughlin, please.
Sorry, just some comments. I didn't have the chance to be at the meeting when it was reviewed last week because I was attending the planning conference remotely, which wasn't great. But basically, I think there's areas where it says there's progress to be needed to be done. So those are the highlight areas we need to do. I also looked at Gibson's idea of sustainability, and they really have incorporated it into their OCP. And so I would encourage us to look at that and maybe try and complement their OCP and maybe work with the SCRD, who are also updating OCPs for the reasons we all have to. So I find there's inspiration, but also there is a climate crisis that was identified and declared at the SCRD. So it's not just a nice thing to do, it's essential that we make this important priority. That is, shows that we're getting things done, and that when we go for grants or funding or shared funding or any projects, that we can show that this is front and center in our planning, our capital planning, and our overall planning. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Okay, I think I got a motion for receipt, so all in favor of receipt? Carried. We then go to page 162 on the amended agenda, which is a new item, which is for the assignment of a lease at the airport. It's page 162 and really typical question or a motion? Thank you. For 1 and 2?
For 1 and 2.
Thank you. A second? Okay, discussion, Councillor Toth.
Thank you. Spending time regularly on Realtor.ca, lot 9 actually was just on the market recently. So I'm wondering if this is the listing has come down because this is the new owner, or if there's something else. Like, are we gonna see another one of these in a couple months' time because somebody else is changing as well? Thanks.
So is it still for sale? Isn't really a concern, but
No, but I'm wondering if, like, it's not listed now. It was on the listings a week ago or 2 weeks ago. So my question is this the new purchaser?
oh,
Or is this like, are 2 of the people changing in the next couple months type of thing? Do we know
they
that?
don't, oh, I see. It's the lease that was listed.
Sorry.
Um,
Apologies.
the Chair recognizes a
Clean up and
glad,
all.
yeah, clean up in aisle 5.
Local flood.
Okay, so I see. All right, so not sure that's, do you want to, have you got somebody to add? Please.
Your worship, at this time, this is the only contract of purchase and sale for lot 9 that we're aware of. That's not to say that there may be something else coming down the road, but we are not aware of any others at this time.
Sure, please, Councillor.
A quick question to corporate officer. Are we collecting fees on assignments? Or were we, the district's agreeing to an assignment of leases?
No, not on this one. It would be in the lease. Sorry. I'll let-
Currently, there is no fee assigned for switching the license assignments for the airport modification agreements. However, it could be something that could be added to the fees and charges bylaw for future.
Yes. So the answer is no, not at the time, present time. Okay, you want to say that into the microphone?
But it should be done. Thank you.
And I agree with you, if only because there's whatever, staff time, our time, there should be, yep. Okay, well, maybe, I'm sure staff will take that as a general comment to be considered, and the next time we go look at our fees and charges. Good. Councillor McLaughlin.
Yes, thank you, through the chair. I realize it's just a lease, but it brings to my mind the question of the airport, the various other lots. I think we're going to have a more discussion about the lots, their location, what they're used for, et cetera. I don't have a much understanding of that because we haven't managed to get around to that. But I think it would be important to have that soon since we are developing an airport plan. And the same lease has come up twice in the last little while. So I don't even know what's in the building. I don't know what they use it for. I don't know if it's recreational, if it's business. I don't know anything. So I just feel a little uncomfortable approving leases without knowing more background information. But I realize it is just a lease, but.
It's actually just an assignment of a lease. so
Yes. well,
There's no change of use or no
I know,
change of
but
the lease.
It doesn't matter. I mean, I'd like to know what's going on. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Inkster.
Yeah, I'm good with this. This is just as I see it, housekeeping.
Mhm.
And Councillor McLaughlin's referencing the fact that we haven't talked much about the airport since that meeting up there. So it'd be good to talk more about it soon, but this is just housekeeping to me.
Great.
Yeah.
Thanks. So we have, anything else? We have the motion seconded, which is on page 162. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. All right, we go then, council, to page 170. And this is the rezoning at 5476 Mills Road. And for your reference, it's page 41 of the agenda, the original agenda. So how would you like to proceed? Maybe I'll look to Mr. Hall first. Or same thing?
Yeah, I mean, we have a rezoning application here, where there's also now the, opportunity to get a jump on the provincial small-scale multi-unit housing regulations that are coming down. And, we're in the situation where we're kind of grappling with the notion of rezoning a property, for something, in advance of provincial changes that would, wipe out the originally proposed zone. So what we've done now is propose a new zone that would be compliant with the SMU zoning that the property will have to be rezoned for by the end of June anyway. And this allows it still would allow the developer to enact their original vision. We are proposing a minimum density of 2 dwelling units for each lot. So that would at least ensure a house with a suite, or it could be a duplex. There's no restriction on the type of units. But looking at the intent of the provincial regulations and our goals for providing a zone that is compliant with the provincial changes, as well as allowing some flexibility for the developer to move forward, that the proposed zoning would allow a range of options here. So we're looking at having this new zone and basically giving them the opportunity to potentially do more on smaller lots than anyone else can currently do in the district of Sechelt, and get sort of a jump on the provincial changes that we'll have to comply with in several months anyway. And it's also a bit of a testing bed for us in terms of preparing zoning regulations that we'll have to do for the whole bylaw anyway.
Okay, thank you. Council, how do you want to proceed? Questions? This is a complicated package here. Yes,
Yeah,
please.
just a couple questions. I know this area fairly well. It's trees on the opposite side of a ditch along Mills Road. And it seems to be one of there's a number of groups of properties that were originally long rectangular lots from the highway going up. That's one of the last remaining pieces that's undeveloped. I guess a property owner passed it on or whatever, and then now is being developed. That's just my assumption because it sat there so long. It's a lot of trees that are there. My question is, when it is developed, I'm assuming based on the proposal that it will be developed as soon as there's approvals, as soon as is possible, quickly. But I'm wondering if it's phased in, whether they'll just cut down all the trees and then just build slowly, or whether the plan is to the developers to slowly, just lot by lot, develop the area and then cut down the trees as they go. It's quite a treat area if council's ever gone up there. So it's one of the stands that you can spot from a distance in West Sechelt, because it's one of the remaining stands other than the ones up. I think McCourt is the other stand of trees that will be developed soon. So, yeah, yeah. I don't know. I'm wondering if staff can answer that or how it will be developed.
Okay, so the question, what do we know about how the applicant proposes to develop all at once, or?
Yeah, I mean,
in
at this
stages?
time for this particular 8-lot subdivision, as far as we're aware, they would develop it all at once. There's no plans for phasing this particular site. So, when we're dealing with development permits and tree cutting issues, I mean, we try to manage that so that, we're dealing with that change. I mean, it would be a sudden change, and obviously we get into figuring out how we can protect and retain trees on small lots, and that'll be something that we'll grapple with through the subdivision and development permit process.
Okay.
Separate from the developers also have the middle property, the central block
Yeah,
between Christian and Bly, where they proposed their townhouse unit development.
Yeah.
That is proposed to be phased, so that would be something where we would look at tying tree removal to those phases, so they're not clearing the entire site at once, that it's cleared only in phases that are reflective of the actual development, so.
Yeah.
Thank you.
thanks. I think that may help with water drainage if they do it that way. So I'm assuming then through you to Mr. Hall, that it probably be a development such as has been done off of Bly, which is cleared and built quickly, and or the road just below Bly off of Mills, which I think this corporation also did, which was a number of houses built within about a 2-year span. So the completion of the neighborhood is fairly quick. My assumption is that then based on what I've been told? Yeah. Okay.
That's my understanding.
Okay.
Just hold it, okay? Well, yeah. Councilor McLaughlin?
Yes, thank you through the chair. I did attend the public meeting for this. I wasn't very well attended. There were a couple of local residents and me, I think. But I don't think at the time we were talking about the potential for new zoning. I brought it up there because it made me think about, should we be going ahead with small lots, small homes? Because even nowadays, small lots with small homes are not affordable homes anymore. And I started thinking what we really need is maybe an example, if possible, and we need our builders to help us do this, is to have the R2 lots, which are bigger lots, but that could show the potential for adding, perhaps for, I don't know if it qualifies for more than 4 or 6, or maybe even, I don't know if it qualifies for 7 units, but perhaps 4 to 6 units. How would that look on a lot that's newly developed? And that would, I think, provide more affordable type housing and perhaps rental and a mix of things that we really need to see to transform our zoning and, our lands, our cityscapes and landscapes, our communities. So I left it open. And since that time, we've learned a lot about what the government has for programs, what their expectations are. They're called SMUFs, small housing, but with perhaps, 6 units on it. So what does that look like? And so I think if we do divvy up these lots in half for small lot homes, I don't think we're going to get, I'd like to see the massing for each of these options, because I don't think we're going to get something that anybody understands at this point. I asked if they were small lot homes and they had suites, but they didn't have basements, does that mean they would take their single car garages that they had at the time and turn those into suites? Like, it kind of scares me to think what could happen. But if we have the opportunity, and I know builders want to build, they're in their sweet spot where they feel they can make the most money and what they would like to do for the market. I know they understand that, but we're not living in the same times as we did in the last 30 years. We need to try and do things differently. And I think one thing I learned from that conference is developers are going to be expected through density to pay for infrastructure, to pay for amenities, and services that we don't even have them pay for now. They're even talking about having developers pay for operating costs for infrastructure. So the future is different. And it's not, to me, the small lot housing is from the past. It was an affordable approach, but it isn't anymore. Thank you.
Right. Okay, thank you. Yes, Councillor Shepherd.
Thanks to the chair and to planning, I'm trying to understand the conflict between what the developer was proposing, which is to rezone to R3, versus the legislation coming in. And I think this goes perhaps to one of Councillor McLaughlin's questions. How does it change the massing? And also, I don't know if planning has read the email that's just come in from City State saying that what the developer has originally proposed, the rezone to R3, does it meet even the Bill 44 legislative targets or goals. Thank you.
Great. Yeah, thanks. This is an email that, for the public that came in at 6:49. So we've had hours and hours to study it. Any comments, Mr. Allen?
Sure, thank you. Your Worship. The primary concern here is that we proceed with an R3 zone. It won't be valid by the time anybody buys or these lots are even created. So we can spend the next couple of months creating an R3 zone, but we're gonna have to change it by June. So that's the difference between their proposal and our response. So we're trying to find a zone that's going to work for the small scale multi-use housing, the R6 zone that we presented for another property on Derby Road, Derby and Granite, and the R6 allows single-family dwelling, suite, duplex, triplex, et cetera, up to 4. So within Bill 44, we're not in a transit area. So as of right by June of before, we could go to 6 if we thought it was appropriate through rezoning. So the wrinkle here in this case is an R6 zone that we're recommending, because this is a piece of property that's fairly large at this point, it's 2,800 square meters, is we're recommending that at least 2 dwelling units be constructed at any property, be it a house and a suite, be it a duplex, a house and an accessory dwelling. Admittedly, that's difficult to do on 300 square meters. That's a small parcel, but the province in their wisdom has indicated that parcels of 300 square meters should and could have 4 dwelling units. That does seem like a stretch admittedly, but we're recommending to the applicants wish to proceed with 1. So it's a question of how we get there. We don't recommend creating a zone that we're gonna have to change in June, but we could create the R6 zone. But again, our recommendation is that at minimum, the house have suites or there be duplex or accessory dwelling in the backyard. So there's a proposal for 300 square meter lots, but they don't yet exist. Following a rezoning comes to subdivision. And so, while that might be the vision, the lots themselves don't exist yet. We have as Councillor Inkster indicated, along relatively narrow property along the frontage of Mills Road from Christian Road to Jasper. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Is that okay for now?
Sorry, Councillor Bell, if I could just, one follow-up question. So the conflict is that the original proposal that the developer submitted is for single family units, whereas the legislation and and I can understand R6 zoning is you're proposing at least a minimum of 2 dwellings per lot.
That's correct, yeah.
Okay, Councillor Bell?
And I don't know if this is appropriate, but at the same time, I understand we have heard from the developer that he has a concern around this. I would like to know what that concern is.
You, is that
Are
all
we
right?
able to hear that
Yeah.
tonight?
Yeah, I can allow it. Mr. Mason? Yes.
Thank you, Mayor, Council, staff. I wanted to say, first of all, that it's very laudable that the staff is bringing forward a movement towards the answering some of the provincial regulations that are coming down. I think it's good. It's good to be in front of it. As a developer, we're involved in projects throughout the province. And this is honestly the first community that I've heard anybody moving forward with that kind of recommendations. And so that's really cool to be on that forefront. Typically, you'd think a developer would go salivating saying, wait a minute, you can let us have 32 units instead of 8? I want to be clear on a couple of things. I work with a company called Westcore. You may not have heard of us. We're involved in a lot of things. This particular development is not a Westcore development. We do have the townhomes down the street. We do have other things that are Westcore. It was owned by Westcore and it was sold to a group of investors and developers for a project-specific purpose. And the purpose was we wanted to create small housing to try to create an attainable step for people to get in. Yeah, I know that word is crazy these days. When I hear the prices come out of my mouth, when I do budgeting, I get embarrassed and want to turtle too. But we're trying to move some things forward on a different level. We have on this particular one, we've talked with our trades group, we've talked with everybody involved. We're trying to limit the amount of profits being made. We're trying to create an efficient system. We're trying to get a pricing in that would be an attainable situation. That's the intention of the project. I made myself a couple of notes while you were talking there, so I just wanted to go through some of that. Yes, for sure, for clarity, we are asking for the R3 zoning for these 8 houses. That's our ask. The R6 zoning is something that staff is bringing together, and I would be fine with that if I knew that we were moving forward. Part of the savings we could pass on to people is efficiency. You may have noted that we started our process in April 2023. The longer we carry the property, the less efficient it is. And Diana, as far as developers go, we do pay, by the way, for all the services that are being developed. We front
Mayor.
all the money for it.
Talk to me, please.
Oh, sorry, Mr. Mayor. Sorry. Yeah, so we do pay for all the services and everything going forward, but all those costs in the end get passed on to the homeowners because that's the nature of business. So our goal is to try to keep those costs down as far as possible, and efficiencies are very important. So what scared us with the R6 zoning is now we're at a place where the zoning doesn't exist yet. It's being proposed, and now we would be subject to waiting for that to be proposed while we're trying to go ahead with our proposal, and we may get lost in mix. We may find ourselves another year down the road without anything being built yet. So that was a concern for us. Another concern is the parking issue. I don't know how we get around parking issue on that street. We've already committed to the residents around the area. I personally have canvassed 100 homes around the area in the rain, talking to people and residents and explaining to them what our purpose for that property would be. And now I'd have to go back and say, because every one of them, their only concern is, what about the traffic? What about the parking? And I don't know how to go back and resolve that. Even if there was relaxations, there's still going to be traffic issues. So I don't know how to do that. As much as I like the zoning and I love it, I fully intend on buying another piece of property and going for an R6 zone and going ahead and starting to densify. But on this particular project, we were seeing the single family homes that are around. We were seeing the townhomes that are coming just below. We were seeing the other homes and the larger homes and the situation. We thought this would be a great transition to go from larger homes, smaller homes, townhomes, et cetera. And it creates that community feel in that area of West Sechelt. We were actually kind of talking with staff, and I have an email on January 30th. We were anticipating, because of the simplicity of this request, which has now got a little bit more complicated, we were anticipating a first, second, and third reading on an email that we had from staff. So that possibility was there. That's what we were hoping for, because it would help us to expedite the situation. I understand it's a little more complicated now, but our request would be to have council go with the recommendation that we go with the R3 zoning as we proposed on this one. I would encourage you to go for the R6 development of that bylaw and structure it well, because I want to take advantage of it coming forward. But on this particular one, we're asking for R3, and we would appreciate it if we could get first, second, and third readings so we can move forward and start this development as fast as possible so we can see some people attain houses in that area.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Thank you. It's my line.
Yes, sorry. Any questions?
No, that's my line.
Oh, okay.
You've got
Yeah,
your
thank
microphone
you.
on? Here you go ahead. Fire away.
You made probably note of my questions earlier then, I think you
Yes.
did. And we weren't sure if you were going to be able to come up as we discussed, but here you are.
Yes.
So if you could answer those questions if possible, just helps me. And the parking issue, I know, when I referenced the lot size and the ditching and the thinness, it's a rural road. Mills is a rural road that's now getting housing on it as our community grows. It was very predictable. It's a nice neighborhood. But I guess maybe you could use Christian.
Yeah.
Yeah, the first 2 lot ends for your parking. I don't know, because I know what you're saying. In terms of parking, I know what could happen there. So just my earlier questions then about the trees that we were talking about. Yeah.
Right. So we have an arborist study of that property that was done earlier. The trees in general, although they provide nice shade and whatnot, are not necessarily the kind of trees that you would leave standing. We don't have large evergreens. We don't have old growth. And it has actually been requested and hoped by the immediate neighbors that these trees would be taken down because some of them do pose a risk to the houses on Christian and Jasper right behind there. So no, in this particular case, when we first started our discussion with the planning department with Sven Koberitz, we were hoping, and we were even saying to him, we were hoping to keep some trees. But he was the one who pointed out to us that it's a small subdivision and it would definitely, and they're not necessarily trees that we would be able to keep. So they're not old growth ones. If there is any that we could identify and keep, we're always in favor of doing that, as you can see on our Mills Road development.
Okay. I have a question based on what we've heard from staff. What if R6 becomes reality in July, what happens to your project?
We want to stick with the 8 houses. That's one of our concerns was that we don't want to be held to a minimum of 2 units
Per lot.
per lot. See, there's a home ownership component that is involved in our initiative. If we're building larger homes with multiple units in them, then typically you're going to have a single homeowner who goes with a large down payment and a larger mortgage, and then they supplement their mortgage through rentals. And although rentals are important, and we have other rental proposals on our docket, it limits the amount of homeowners. So I'd have maybe 4 homeowners, and some of them may even reside there, and some of them might be landlords. That's not the purpose of our initiative, and not that we can necessarily get to control that. But if we can create 8 smaller homes and we can allow 8 people to get into home ownership, those people will be part of this community that will then allow to move up in their life as they move forward. So it limits home ownership. That's the bottom line. By 2 or more units on a property, I won't see 2 homeowners. I'll see 1 homeowner with a rental. So.
And that's not necessarily bad.
It's not bad. It
No.
just wasn't part of our purpose-driven initiative. And remember, when we were putting this proposal together, it was January, February last year with a group of people who said, that sounds fantastic. And as the APC noted when we were talking to them, they called it, I thought the word was wonderful. They said laudable.
Right.
So.
Okay, I think, thanks. Yep,
Thank you.
something, or do you have a question for Mr. Mason or for more broadly?
Well, it's a little more broadly.
Okay, so let's hold that. Thank you,
Yeah.
Mr. Mason. Yep, please.
I mean, what we're talking about here is the missing middle. You know, we will always probably have some houses that are for people that might be somewhat affordable, that are single-family homes that may have no suites in them or whatever. I don't think we need to build 8 more small ones of those. The idea of the programs that we have and the financing that's available to developers, et cetera, is to focus on housing for younger families, immigrants, and those at risk of homelessness. That's the real focus of all this. So I don't think we're gonna really get that, unfortunately, with what's proposed. I would rather see the lot stay in their larger size and have the new zoning go through and see what can be done with it. Because, you know, we've been building this way for a long time. It's not gonna happen easily to change, but this is an opportunity to change. And to show that with our developers that, you know, claim to be local, have so much expertise, and I believe they do. I would just like to see them use it to help us transform this community in a way that is more sustainable. So I
Thank you.
think the new zoning is, I would support it for this property and with the larger lots as they stand, so not having small lot subdivision. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Inkster.
Just a clarification, I'm just looking through the notes on this one. Based on the small lot proposal, size of houses, the houses that they want to build or to build. What's the lot coverage, percentage lot coverage that's being, I'm just really trying to look for it here, percentage lot coverage. What was it?
Yeah, the R3 zone has a lot coverage of 45%. The R6. The R6 would have a lot coverage of 50%.
Okay, but is that what the proposal is though? Is that?
R3 is
Yeah.
the, well, sorry,
Yeah.
staff proposal.
Yeah, I mean, the
R6.
existing R3 zone has a lot coverage of 45%. You know, the applicants weren't proposing any changes to the R3 zone, just taking the existing stock R3 zone In the proposed R6 zone, the lot coverage goes from 45% to 50%.
That's the proposed
Yeah.
building. Okay, thanks. I like that, so thanks.
Other comments, questions, Councillor Rowe?
Just actually a follow-up on, I think, a question you had, Your Worship. I'm just not clear on if this moves forward as the developer wants. What happens when to that project, when the legislation comes in June or July? Like, is there some grandfathering in, or what happens if, they're shovels in the ground kind of thing?
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Director of Planning?
Thank you, Your Worship. Great question, Councillor Rowe. I understand that some projects that have covenants registered on title, covenants would apply, but as a whole, as by right, property owners of titles, if they're serviced by water and sewer, will be able to have in Sechelt 4 units per property. So if the property exists and the house is already there, that's of course a lot more challenging, but one would have the right to do so. So like take this property, and if it's zoned R2 as it stands now, or potentially R3, my thought right now, right here, is that we'd be changing it to R6. Because the future owners, even if we kept it at R3, the future owners of the property by right would be able to construct 3 more dwellings or units of dwellings on the site. That may be subject to one more legal review of our bylaws, but that's my interpretation from attending and tuning into several seminars put on by both the ministry as well as our solicitors and reading the guidebook. There's a lot of content, as councillors here well know, a lot of content coming our way, and doing our best to keep up and keep current and be on the forefront of it. Thank you.
So I'll follow on that. So this is still gray, for want of a better word. There's a lot of moving parts to what the province is going to decree and what makes sense for us. I mean, is it fair that even in an R6 going forward, there might be provision for still to be single family?
It's possible. I'd like to defer to Mr. Hall as he's drafted the R6 zone as it stands at the moment. I see him leaning in towards his microphone.
Yes, but I mean, the operative thing there is it's something at this stage you folks are drafting.
Correct.
And so
true.
to echo something said earlier, we're leading, which is, I think most people know I'm a fan of us getting out ahead. But maybe we can turn to Mr. Hall.
Sure. I mean, the R6 zone that has been drafted has been informed by the provincial guidebook that has been released, that has a variety of recommendations regarding the number of units, the type of units, maximum heights, all those kinds of things. It's quite extensive. Now what's proposed is basically informed by that and what we have in our existing zone. So the way it works, the provincial changes require us for all lots that are 280 square meters or larger, that have municipal water and sewer and are within the urban containment boundary, will have to be pre-zoned to allow up to 4 units. So the province isn't mandating a minimum density, but we are able through existing powers to establish a minimum density, and the information that we've read and the webinars that we've attended to, that question has come up, and the province has not said that we cannot do that. In fact, I think that would meet the intent of what they're trying to achieve, is providing a wider range of housing types and densities allowed on these lots.
But the operative thing is that would be the maximum, but in some cases, we might feel that
Yep.
single family makes more sense because of parking that was mentioned, or
Yeah, so what
other
we've
factors.
done in this zone is simply say the minimum density is 2 dwelling units. So that could still be in a variety of configurations. That could be a house with a suite. It could be 2 small detached dwelling units. It could be a duplex. We haven't restricted the 2 dwelling units to a particular housing form. And parking too is also proposed for some reductions. the single family dwelling piece would remain. I think currently it would be 2 parking spaces for a single family dwelling. We're proposing as part of this zoning to change that down to 1, as well as changing the secondary suite parking requirement from 1 to 0.5. So there would be some parking reductions there. So ultimately, for somebody doing 4 units on the property would only have to provide 4 parking spaces on the property.
See, that's where I get into concerns with this whole thing of trying to get ahead of ourselves, because we've heard the parking in this case would be a real problem with any level of density.
Yep, but there would still be, I guess, the minimum parking requirement for them to provide on each lot off-street.
Right, but do we have enough land? Do they have enough land in this case?
Again, that'll be something they'd have to prove out as part of the subdivision and development permit stage, but and this is where the province is sort of requiring us to make these sweeping changes at a zoning level, but ultimately will come down to every site to determine whether or not they can actually feasibly do that, whether or not it's completely vacant land, or there's existing buildings on the property. Can they fit everything they want to do on these particular properties and have all the services available and have the capacity? So right now, we're still grappling with this requirement to pre-zone. But ultimately, the feasibility of that will come down to each particular site.
Right, okay, and I think to me, that's the biggest issue. I celebrate trying to get ahead. But I'm concerned that in doing so, we're still not really clear of the implication of that. So I'm kind of leaning to staying with the R3 for this one. But I see 2 microphones on, and remember, when they're on, the camera turns on you. So yeah, Councillor McLaughlin.
Thank you through the chair. Another aspect that came up, I have a question about, is they mentioned in terms of this new planning legislation is it's important to know or to relook at how you define dwelling unit. And so in our case, it requires cooking facilities. So I was wondering, what does that mean in today's day? Does it mean they need a stove with an oven, a normal kitchen? Or could they get by with a hot plate or something different? Because, I think that really informs the type of units that we will get. And just to also add, unfortunately, we're not going to really be leaders in this because I was looking online, and apparently the city of Edmonton has a number of videos that really nicely illustrate and show what this looks like in terms of the missing middle and densifying. So they actually have a leg up on us on this. So I was very interested to see those videos. I think it's very helpful to show people what it will look like because a lot of us are visual people. We want to know what we're in for. And so they've actually done that quite nicely. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So your question, I guess, was about what constitutes cooking facilities.
Yeah, so a dwelling unit does require cooking facilities, and in particular, that means like a kitchen, like a normal kitchen with an oven stove. So whether that's a single family dwelling, a secondary suite, a duplex, a triplex, whatever, each dwelling unit is a self-contained unit that has a full kitchen. So whether it's a single dwelling with a secondary suite, that's 2 dwelling units, each of them will have their own kitchen, a full kitchen, versus a duplex, each half the duplex. It's the same. So if it doesn't have a stove or anything, then it's not considered a dwelling unit. And this is something we've been grappling with on a related note with the short-term rentals in terms of type 1 versus type 2. But for our purposes, a dwelling unit requires the kitchen, which requires the oven and stove.
Okay, great.
Yeah, just to follow up. We may want to look at that because apparently 30% of people don't use their stoves. They use their microwaves, they eat takeout, it's just reality.
Yeah.
And we have small households, less than probably 2 people and seniors, So I think it's something that we may want to revisit.
Very good. Thank you. Yeah. Here, air fryers are in these days too.
I'll be brief, but to complement Councillor McLaughlin's comment, the simple answer would be that the BC Building Code will continue to apply regardless of the way we structure through zoning. And that can be a challenge when you get into 3 units plus in terms of fire separations and so forth. But the manual and the province have been clear that the BC Building Code will continue to apply, which provides structure yet challenges for some of these types of dwellings.
One more for me and then I think I'm done. This was the reference earlier about if we were to go R3 and then there was a secondary unit, would we lose the garage? Is that how it would happen? I think that was the comment that Councillor McLaughlin raised. Oh, I'm not taking the hint.
No, I don't think so. Again, when, the minimum lot, sort of the minimum dwelling units, again, just a requirement for a minimum of 2 dwelling units, not restricting the configuration. So if somebody's building a house and they choose not to have a garage, that's on them. We're not restricting whether or not they can have a garage or restricting where the second dwelling unit would be. If it's a house with a secondary suite, I would anticipate that there would be a garage, because that's an easy way of providing off-street parking. So no, the dwelling unit restriction does not impair their ability to have a garage.
Doesn't
It's not.
restrict it, but there's enough land to have the house with a garage and a secondary unit.
That's something they'll have to prove out through the subdivision stage to how they can make that work, which means likely smaller dwelling units in order to fit everything on site.
Right. Okay. All right, council. Me, Councillor Shepherd.
I direct my comments to the rest of council. I'm really torn about this one. I'm sort of convinced by the developer's argument that this is a stepping stone type of project where there's small housing. This is what we're, which is affordable. I believe it's affordable, or will be. However, it just doesn't make sense to me to allow something to be zoned R3 when effectively that's all going to be changed within a certain number of months. So, and yet, if we proceed with it being rezoned as R6, I don't know, we don't know whether the parking could be held,
Like they're the same.
accommodated, or, so I'm not quite sure. I guess one of the unfortunate impacts of it is that if there are 8 units proposed and it is zoned R6, it may end up only being 6 or 5, and yet they can do more dwellings on the larger property. So I'm really, my gut feel is that we just have to move with the R6 zoning because it's the provincial mandate. This is what the province is going to be imposing going forward. So it's, unfortunately, the developers caught up in the change in times. And I don't know.
I guess that's up
just
to
my
us,
sense.
so,
Yeah,
we could do an R3 and it's up to the developer to
And our,
respond to an R6 down the road.
sorry, say that again?
If we were to proceed with an R3, and by the time they're ready for subdivision, R6 is mandated, they'd have to react to that. And I think I'm right, R6 is deals more with the maximum density. So in theory, we could, they could be back saying, well, we want the same thing under R6. It's still 8 dwelling units.
Oh,
Speculation, so that's part of my concern. A lot of this is
clarification from
speculation.
planning, please?
Yeah.
Sure. Maybe just to clarify too, I mean, the one thing to keep in mind, even for existing zoning as it is now, regardless of the SMU changes, is it's still, even if a property has zoning to allow a dwelling with a secondary suite, whatever it allows, it doesn't mean that they can necessarily get everything. So even if where we pre-zone lots for up to 4 units, that just removes the barrier of rezoning. So like, okay, no, you're allowed to have these 4 units. You don't need to rezone your property. It doesn't mean that you'll be able to get 4 units on a property. You still have to prove out all the servicing. You still have to prove out the siting. So that's one thing to keep in mind, that even if we pre-zone this property or any of these other properties that are serviced by water and sewer, they still have to prove out the siting, they still have to prove out parking, they still have to prove out water and sewer, all those things. And it may come back that on a particular property, they can't do 4 units. Maybe on some of the lots, they can only do 2. Maybe on others, they can only do 3. So the zoning change is really meant at a provincial level to remove the perceived barrier of rezoning for this level of density. But it still comes down to each site having to prove out that they can do what they want to do. And then in terms of the other aspect, again, the R6 zone wouldn't preclude them from doing a single family dwelling. What we're proposing is that it should have a suite if they're going to do a single family dwelling. At the time, there's, from everything we've read, that we could, if council decided to, remove single family dwelling as a permitted use and say, no, we want to see duplexes at a minimum only in terms of actual uses and housing types. But that's not what we're proposing. The province is saying we just want to allow other types of housing beyond the single family dwelling and more density on lots where previously it's only been that single family housing form.
That's great. Very helpful. Thanks.
Yes, Councillor Bell.
I just speaking to both Councillor Shepherd and also Mr. Hall. Absolutely. I think that one of the things that, basically coming away from the housing summit is that the provincial government is now in the zoning business. And that's really what they are looking at, is making it easier for people to change their zoning. But that does not preclude that they can force us to do things that we're not able to do on particular pieces of land and pieces of infrastructure that might not be there. So I think that's the big picture. And there's going to be a lot of learning through this process. I will say that coming back from that conference, that there are municipalities right across the province that are all dealing with these questions. And this is our first really to talk about this. So I appreciate that we're able to have this conversation tonight. And if we can look at the big picture and see, this is really a zoning piece right now. And what we're actually able to do, that's going to come down the line in terms of where we go and what we can and cannot do. Just simply, that's what it'll be.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
So if we went with R6, are we really saying you can't have 8 individual single-family homes? Because we haven't done our own bylaw yet.
No, if the R6 zone is adopted as proposed, the only change, I guess, would be that they could still do 8 lots, they could still have 8 single-family homes, but the requirement under the R6 zone would be that each of those 8 homes has to have a secondary suite to meet the minimum 2 dwelling units.
Right, as drafted.
Yeah,
But-
as drafted currently.
But we could run into a situation in theory where like you said, the parking and the other limitations couldn't be proven out.
Yeah,
To
potentially.
allow that, in which case R6 would be ineffective.
Or they just couldn't, if it came back that they couldn't make that work, then we have to deal with it at that time. The zoning is really just meant to establish sort of minimums and maximums, same thing with setbacks, heights, all those parameters. It'll come down to, given also that we're proposing a reduction in parking requirements for secondary suites. So if somebody puts in a house with a secondary suite based on this proposed zoning, that would only be 1.5 parking spaces required. Whereas under current zoning and under the R3 zone as it currently stands, they would be required 2.3 spaces, 2 for the house and 1 for the suite.
Okay. Thanks. I think Councillor Toth.
Thank you. I haven't said anything yet because I've been really struggling with this, because I've said in the past that we need to stop stamping down single family homes. And putting in suites is, sort of a minimum viable product to not stamping down single family homes. And so I actually came into this meeting prepared to move forward with the SMU and the R6 zoning, but in hearing of the challenges and hearing from the developer, they're clearly caught in an in-between place because of the changes from the province. I would love to see the single family homes with the suites. I would love to see this additional density. That's not the project that they've been working forward with. And so I'm gonna go against what I said in the past about not stamping down single family homes. I think we're gonna have a couple more projects that sort of have to work through this transition. And I'm actually gonna move option 1 on page 170, which is to go with the R3 zone.
Okay, thank you. So that's a motion. And, right, so okay,
Mine was
is there a
on.
seconder?
Point of order, but my thing was on. You're just going to ignore it.
Well, no, but there's a motion, so priority is I need to find out if there's a seconder. Oh, second. Okay, thank you. Yes, Councillor McLaughlin.
Right. Thank you to the chair. I am a little concerned that the possibility could be that the small lots could end up having 4 units on them. Imagine that on a 280 square foot lot, or maybe more. And I'm not comfortable with that. That's a possibility. And also, I
Sorry,
think,
I need you to clarify that. How could it be more than 4 in terms of the
well,
motion?
transit or whatever, there is transit nearby. Also, we haven't talked about any amenity contributions or anything as well. So I just don't feel comfortable with it because we don't know what will happen once these, and I thought they were like single story houses, like starter homes with no basement. So how are you going to get suites on that? It just, to me, from what I saw, it doesn't
Okay, yeah.
really work.
Please.
I'm not finished yet, excuse
Well,
me.
no, excuse me.
You're not actually speaking to the motion that I made.
Yeah.
The motion that I made is option 1, about 2/3 of the way down the page. Direct staff to change the proposed zoning amendment
Yeah, I'm
bylaw
opposed to option
to
1.
align with the applicant's original vision of single-story ranchers with no secondary suites on 8 lots. That's the motion that I made.
Right. So I'm opposed to that for those
Okay,
reasons. So I
right.
am speaking to it.
Right.
And what the government will see is when we go for infrastructure grants, if they don't see and they don't like what we're doing as a small community, I don't think we're going to get a lot of support. So I think it behooves us to actually try and raise our bar for development and not just, do what developers would like to have. These lots would be 4 large lots to do what should be done. It's unfortunate that they got together as a group and wanted something else,
So.
but that's another story. Thank
Okay,
you.
Councillor McLaughlin, so
Can we
you're
call the
opposed,
question, please?
you're opposed to the motion, that's understood. Councillor Bell, with your indulgence, I want to make sure, is there any other discussion? Councillor Inkster?
Yeah, we've heard from council members before talking about not looking at single family, which is an interesting thing that's changed over the last number of years, because that was really important many, many years ago. We just built them smaller in parts of West Sechelt to make them more affordable. And Councillor Toss said he changed his mind. That's fair, but I did not hear your rationale. I was listening because I want to, when somebody changes their position and states that, I kind of need to know why, because I'm open to some solutions here, but I'm not sure why you're proposing this solution.
Councillor Toth?
Thank you. And like I said in my comments, I would love to see secondary suites or triplexes or whatever, but this isn't a project that is just starting out. This is something that they're midway through their process. They've gone to the neighborhood, they've gone to the community, they've gone to the APC under a certain set of circumstances. And so if we were to change paths on this project midstream, we're throwing out all of that work that they've done, that our APC has done, and basically asking them to start over again, which may be the will of council. But that's not where I'm coming from right now. I would rather see something getting built than seeing this project held up while we wait for the provincial zoning changes to be implemented.
Thank you. Okay. Last question. If you need to.
Yeah, I do. This is a difficult one. And I think all of council knows that. And I would just ask, through you to Councillor Toth, is that his argument then is that he wants these built because in his mind, he sees a number of affordable units coming on the market quicker than if we went in a different direction. Is that what he's saying?
I'm really leery to use the term affordable.
Yes.
Because when we talk about, West Seashell building smaller and smaller and smaller lots and smaller homes, the average price of a home in Seashell is still $960,000. And a single family home with a suite on it is probably $1.1 million. So from that perspective, we're not really going to get affordable out of this project either way.
Okay, I asked Counselor Bell, she did call the question, so that dictates us to call the question. So. Yes. Yeah, no, this is on Counselor Toss motion, which is option 1 on page 41 of the old agenda. 170, thank you. So we're all clear on what we're voting on? Okay, all in favor? Sorry, 1, 2, no, 3. You seconded the motion. Okay. All opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, motion is defeated. So we're back to okay. So council, how would you like to proceed? Mike? Counselor Bell, I'll let you turn your microphone off and yeah, Alan.
I suppose it's late, but council knows that this topic remains under discussion. I'm not sure the applicants that need to leave. But a middle ground, a solution to find the balance between the R3 and the single family and the R6 that we're moving towards that will apply is omitting the requirement to have the suite, converting it to the R6, and allowing them to have the choice of the 1 to 4 dwelling units. Now, that's not our recommendation. It wasn't our preference, noting that council is split, that achieves moving towards R6. This property will be zoned R6 in June. That much we know, okay? The question is, are we going to insist upon more than 1 dwelling unit on a property, or are we going to allow them to make that decision? That's splitting the difference between the R3 and the R6 as we have proposed.
Right. The R6, though, at this point is undefined, subject to us making a decision.
There's a clause in the R6 that says you must have at least 2 dwelling units. We wrote that. That can be omitted.
Yes, yes. So that's the clarification
Mhm.
that I'm looking for.
Yeah.
So please, Councilor Rowe.
Is there a way to omit that for projects that are in this situation, but not, as a general rule for new coming forward? Because I would be in support of requiring a secondary suite as a general rule. But I would be interested in, projects that are in this situation to have that choice.
Right. And the challenge there is we're looking at properties, development properties like this one's, vacant properties like this one, and moving towards the SHMU and the R6. The trouble is if we applied that broadly to everybody who's in the R2, R4 downtown, then you're making everybody non-conforming. And supposing a house burns down and now the zoning requires you to rebuild a suite, but your insurance might not provide that funding, for example. So we want to distinguish it, and we haven't quite ironed out this. This is one of the things we're still working on. Distinguish that between new vacant buildable sites like the one on Mills Road and existing properties that aren't subject to renewal, but might have the opportunity to put in a suite or might have the opportunity to have a laneway if it were on Spindrift or Dolphin or Mermaid, for example, right? So there's some subtleties there that we need to work out. But the requiring the second dwelling was staff recommendation. Is not legislated, but it's the direction in which the province is expecting us to go. But noting a 4-3 vote, that's very uncommon, to be, in this position, trying to bring forward what could be a middle ground solution.
And is it fair, I mean, all of this is about the province removing an impediment to density. But there are other factors at play that would prevent in certain cases density from happening, which we've talked about, the parking of the trees, of the access of the transit and so on.
Geotech,
Yeah.
creeks, et
So,
cetera.
so in other words, the
Mhm.
R6 that we're drafting and you're now commenting on is setting an aspirational goal that we, hey, you want this R6, you can build 4. But you might come back for a bunch of reasons saying we only want to build 2 or we shouldn't build any, I suppose.
Right, we're just trying to, and in this case through mandating through a rezoning, but trying to signal that in our serviced areas within our urban containment boundary, we're expecting more than single family dwelling. And that comes from the premier, from the minister, from the ministry through to your planning staff. And it's just simply, this property will be R6 in June.
Understood, but
Mhm.
it might be R6, forget about this property for a minute.
Right.
It'll be R6, but we might not be able to build 4.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right.
And so
but-
that's where I'm concerned
Mhm.
that the idea that R6 is absolutely is dictating a certain level of density. I don't think that's the goal.
Mhm.
It's making it permissible. And if you want to sell your property, you'll be able to, the buyer has some security that he'd be able to get for. Counselor Shepherd, thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
I'm willing to move a motion for this project that it proceed with an R6 zoning, but there be, sorry if you can help me with the wording. It's permissible that it's up to the owner to decide on whether to build the secondary suite or not. And I,
Okay, so to try and put some words that they're allowed. Yeah. Okay,
Get groaning in the
I'm
background.
gonna, yeah, but perhaps.
Yeah.
Sorry,
half of
point
an
of
R6
order,
is an
point of
R3.
order.
Thank you. I saw you, Counselor.
I was on
McLaughlin.
first
No.
and I
I'm
was
gonna-
ignored.
No, thank you. Counselor.
Following Director Allen's comments, I would say the simplest is, it's section 1.6.5 in the R6 zone. That is the requirement for the minimum density of at least 2 dwelling units. So if, based on council comments, I would say we could simply remove that section 1.6.5 from the proposed R6 zone, and that would address Director Allen's approach and comments from council.
Right. Okay, understood. Thank you. Counselor McLaughlin.
Yes, thank you to the chair. Wasn't it implied that, every home should have a secondary suite in the legislation? That's my impression. And also, given that we live in Sechelt, I have a hard time supporting single-family homes, single-family dwellings. We have a water crisis, and if I'm going to approve development, I would really like to think that somehow that housing is going to be providing possibly affordable units, smaller units to house the people we need to work here. We have lots of big homes, almost exclusively big
Counselor
homes.
McLaughlin, these are not big homes. Okay, let's move on.
Well, we have lots of big homes.
We call the question, please.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I think it's,
So
people
do we
are
have-
not
we don't
going to
have a
be
motion yet,
supportive
So
if
understood,
it
you're
means
not
a waste of
supportive.
water. Thank
That's
you.
fine. Thank you. So Counselor Toth is going to take a stab.
Thank you, Chair. I made my comments, I made my point. The will of council was not to proceed that way. I'm going to move the recommendations on page 170 as presented,
Well,
as
I-
presented.
Okay, and so in spite of what you've heard staff
Mhm.
saying they'd like to remove,
No, not that they'd like to remove,
they're willing.
that an option could be to remove. So I'm going back to the original comments that I've made previously, that a secondary suite is sort of the minimum viable product if we're going to be stamping down single family dwellings. So.
Okay,
There we go.
thank you. Okay, need a bigger screen. Okay, I just don't like imposing rigid requirements, in this case for 2. Because this becomes part of, like, in some ways, we're already discussing an R6 zoning for the community in the context of a specific project. And so I don't know at this point whether they could do 2 units with parking, for example, on this project. So I'm far more in favor of taking staff's suggestion that, hey, remove 1.6.5, which still gives, everybody knows the province is going to mandate higher the density, presumably things like the lower the amenity contribution. You know, so there'll be an incentive for builders to boost the density, but I just don't see it as helpful to impose to. Councilor Tom.
Thank you. In reading the bylaw tonight, I see that we are, because let me try that question again. We have other things that we're looking at potentially for this R6 zone. The bylaw that we're reading tonight would be to identify this property as an R6 with its particular parking requirements and the things like that are stated on page 182. Does that set us, if we modify the bylaw to remove 1.6.5, are we setting up an R6 and an R6A if we proceed forward with other projects in the future? Because we're not giving reading to adding the R6 zone to our zoning bylaw. My understanding is that we're giving reading to changing this property to an R6 zone. Thank you.
Worship. At this point, the R6 zone would apply just to this property. That's accurate as depicted on the map schedule below, but it will set the table for the broader R6 if that's the term we use. But there's a few other things that we still need to figure out in terms of how it's going to apply. And hypothetically, there could be an R6 A and B. Christian Road, immediately adjacent to this parcel, has residential lots that are on septic field. If this parcel and the townhouses below, then reasonably you could expect a sewer line will go down Christian Road and those properties would be R6 applicable. Whereas Mason Road, there's a sewer line, but Ewell Road, Meyer Road, Linwood Court that come off of the west side of Mason and slope away from the sewer line are not on sewer and not likely to get on sewer in the near future. So then do we have an R6 that runs down the middle of Mason Road and encumbers some, but not all of the properties? So there's a lot of that unevenness that might lead to an R6 A and B or a circle of R2 and R6. And that's part of our challenge. This is not a straightforward urban municipality that the province might be anticipating. And it's challenging for us. I hope that isn't further cloudy.
Which is why the R3 was helpful, because there wouldn't be confusion about a 6A, 6B. So, Councillor Inkster.
Yeah, I thought we had the original staff presentation of the motions put forward to us, and I thought until the last minute proposal by the proponents, we had that was what we were going to decide on, which would trigger the movement forward of the subdivision. So now we're, as far as I can tell, back to that motion, and now we're not. We were prepared to pass it before this afternoon. Now we're stuck in not passing it. So there's.
Well, I don't know if we were prepared to
Well,
pass it.
It was,
Yeah.
well, okay, so if we look at statistically, how many
Okay,
times have
but-
we said no? You know, I think this council was prepared to move forward with this proposal. And this was the staff work done on it based on previous discussions. So here it is. And now we're undecided, so a little confusing.
Yes, I will agree with that. Yes, I know, and I want to make sure so are there any other comments? Because this is as presented, and my comment, in addition to setting a potential precedent, you know, we're doing a lot of things in this that we would, for most bylaws, we would spend a fair bit of time going through and agreeing on what is the right parking densities and stuff like that. So
Well,
This is kind of all coming to us now.
Just to
Mm.
further to that, everyone's talking about parking. What the proponents said was that when they were building the parking, and then staff had indicated others, that the parking problem. I'm not sure, as the other side of the road generally for parking spaces for residents. So they don't tend to use Mills Road. So now we got that. There may be parking on one side and how they deal with the ditch, et cetera, right?
So we're speculating and I don't like
We're-
making
we're
decisions on
speculating, but
speculation.
Sometimes council makes decisions. on Future view. So I'm just saying.
Any other insights? Councilor McLaughlin.
Just a
Please Put
comment.
your hand up, please, because the mic, yes, thank you.
Just a comment, I would like to see more community planning done in this area to understand, you know, maybe the developers have some idea of the shape of it, but we're not privy to that. So I would like to see some community planning done in that area and amenities identified in the local communities and the community associations and a vision for how we foresee this neighborhood in the future. Also, I think the schools would need to be consulted because I think they're feeling a bit left out with these proposals that they don't know what's coming at them with all this legislation either, but they are.
Well, we know
Sorry.
we've got to update our OCP, but at the moment, we do have a community plan. Called the OCP today.
I mean, neighborhood plans
Well,
on
okay,
neighborhood district
neighborhood.
area so that we understand what we will want for amenity contributions to revitalize and provide amenities in the future for our communities. Thank you.
Councillor Inkster?
Yeah, I don't know where, I'm assuming this has a seconder, it's on the table,
Yep.
getting confusing. Reminds me of my document that I looked at earlier. So in further in speaking to this and what Councillor McLaughlin is saying is that it's probably an amenity discussion because in terms of land use and or densification in that area, I think that if we proceed, we're going to find that there's going to be problems in neighborhoods in those areas with how we propose and or put forward densification. There's already an issue in the Highland area, proposal based on with the densification change and the height of the building. So we need to consider that as we move forward. So it might be an amenity thing, but density we may need to consider in some of those single family neighborhoods. Thanks. I would prefer density in this area going up the hill, but I've said that before.
Yep. Okay. I will call the question. This is as presented. Ready? All in favor? Okay, and I'm opposed. I would like to have taken the staff encouragement or suggestion or whatever it was. So motion carries. Thank you, everyone. We then go to fees and charges. Bylaw, right. On page 84. No. Page 53 of the old agenda. How about that? Hmm? What page number is it? 182. Okay, right. Okay, so this is before us for first and second reading. Our new procedures bylaw is, allows us to do two at once if you wish. Woo-hoo. Could I have a motion? And what is the motion? To give first and second reading or, okay, okay. Seconded, any discussion? Yep, this is on, no, this is on page 182. So this is the bylaw for the Mills Road project. Okay. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, the motion carries. Now we can go to the fees and charges bylaw. which is on page 187. Thank you. Any discussion? Yes, please.
So I guess, the change in these fees is a little late for the reduction in the last few years. First one in a few years that's come.
The movie?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah. I guess
what,
we're,
no, that's
yeah.
what this was part of why this came to us. So this is for adoption, so.
yeah, I know, but the filming has begun. So I guess in future, it may kick in.
I think we're getting these rates now. Okay, all in favor of adoption? Carried. All right, so we go to the minutes starting on page 189. And any comments? I think not. This is the closed, regular to close, so a motion please. Second, all in favor of adoption? Carried. Next one is page 191. And, oops, make sure. In regular meeting of council. Oh, motion, Councillor Bell, thank you. Seconded, all in favor of adoption. Thank you. And then the council meeting of February 7th. Want to make sure. Any comments, anybody? Yes, oh yes, Councillor Toth, please.
Thank you. There were just a couple of changes to be made to the SCRD director's reports. I submitted them in already by email. I don't know if that's enough for council, if we need them read in the meeting.
Council had a chance to see them? You're okay with taking it as you say, Councillor Toth, clarifications, not dramatic changes to, okay. Right, okay. Yep, we'll take that, his Councillor Toth's comments, we've all seen them, so they'll be integrated into the minutes, so a motion as amended. Seconded, and all in favor of adoption as amended. Carried, I think. No, carried. Can't say that, can I? All right. That brings us to the committee of the whole. And I had a question on February 14th. We are noting that the page is 201, that 3 councillors were absent. I'm aware of at least 2 that provided regrets. So, okay, you could amend that, please. And I've got a question after we adopt them, assuming we did. Chair, I turn to you to make sure you're okay with them, since it was your meeting. Yep. Okay, a motion to adopt, seconded, all in favor, carried. My question was about the ICSP and that the neighborhood community associations, that this be referred to them. I'm not sure, not to put anybody on the spot, but can you please make sure that's being done? You know, I mean, we did in committee ask for that, so want to make sure it's done. Make a motion if you want to. Okay. So okay.
Yeah, I'm assuming that that document, all the other documents, the zoning, the OCP changes specifically to the neighborhood, and then if we start to do some community plan changes, they'll be continued to be or will be, if it hasn't been done enough, consultations with the community association. I'm assuming your comment was maybe based on West Seashelt asking for some information, because they did request that we have some more input from them on a recent item. I just can't recall it. I was going to bring it up.
No, I think this came up in the meeting last
Okay.
week, and I'm aware from our ending the SCAF that they were particularly interested in being kept informed, so.
Of course.
It's not a particular singular issue, it's
Yeah.
just wanting to make sure we don't forget to do it.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
There was just one more recently that maybe it specifically was brought up at SCAF about West Sechelt wanting some more consultation on this specific issue.
Yes.
It just came up and staff may have remembered that as well. I just hope we're continuing to consult with the community association, especially when we're making a number of changes that may include some densification issues. So I hope we just keep doing that.
And
Thanks.
when you come to SCAF, they have cookies. Well, they did.
We had cupcakes too, I think.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Our corporate officer, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a clarification on the motion was, my understanding is that the ICSP will be referred to community associations through the engagement process that is already in the plan for that. But I was curious if the motion was to refer the ICSP update report to the community associations prior to any other engagement.
Please.
I guess it was my motion, so I should clarify. So my motion was to forward the ICSP update report to the community associations
As received by us.
as it was received by us, you know, for feedback.
And we voted on that yet?
I seconded it.
I know, I don't think we
No,
voted.
no.
Okay. Your indulgence, I'll call the question. All in favor? Carried. No, is that okay? Okay, council, getting there. Item 9.1 is the SCRD representatives report. I'm sure there's nothing's been going on, so.
Did, you want to
Counselor
go first on that
Dodd?
one? You were sitting at the vice chair position the other day, yeah?
Yeah, there's actually not that much Regional District 2 report on since the last council meeting because last week was electoral area services. However, on Tuesday, we did have a special board meeting that was called because the chair brought back the Langdale Wellfield budget item for reconsideration. So we ended up having a 2.5-hour meeting discussing the Langdale Wellfield project. And directors had some questions, some comments, concerns, a fair bit of debate and discussion. At the end of the day, we did reaffirm the decision to defer it to 2025, pending, you know, the wells that we're going to be drilling in the Sechelt area and getting report back on whether something closer to the demand is going to be viable.
Located closer to the.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. So beyond that, tomorrow is going to be financial plan bylaw is being given 3 readings and adoption. So that's the SCRD budget process finished. And then there's also going to be a contract award tomorrow to do coastal flooding mapping. So that's part of the hazard and the HRVA updates that need to be done. So, and that will encompass the municipal areas as well. So that's really all I have for now.
Anything to add, Counselor Inkster?
Yeah, we're getting more fire flow information too. I think that we really should be taking a close look at that again. It's going to, there's going to be a work plan associated with it. But we really should be taking a look at the future and the number of issues that will be in that. I think, you know, if you look at the map, some parts of West Sechelt and downtown are going to have good flow. But there's some other areas that we need to make sure that have good fire hydrant water in them. Does council know that there's a system on the fire hydrants, like traffic lights? Did council know that? Green, red, and yellow? It just, because, yeah,
On the map.
no, on the hydrants.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes, yes.
Yeah, there's green, red, and yellow to identify, you know,
Pressures.
the pressure and the amount of water that's in. So when a firefighter comes to them, they know that they know that that one's good or that's got enough, or they can move on to they have to move on to the next one and they can do it quickly. And that was a local department that had that idea. So quite a creative department we have here. But anyway, I mean, these are all about
these are all about disaster mitigation. It's always about that nowadays because of some of the concerns we have. But, water is, it was a lot of discussion. I thought it was going to be an hour meeting. It was 2.5, but the discussion was good. And I know that at least one member of council watched it, and the Seashell representatives had a lot of discussion and questions about how specifically our wells. And I mentioned to you earlier, we probably should talk about that. You should figure out a way to talk about the well issue amongst our council members, because there's some concerns that I think Councilor Toth and I have on the wells.
Very good.
Yeah.
We'll do that.
The Seashell wells, because if we don't do, now that we're not doing the south of Gibson's ones, then we have to make sure there's enough water in the Seashell area. Yeah, thanks.
Great. Thank you. All right, council, I'm going to be linear this today, so we'll start with Councillor Bell and we'll just go this way.
All right, thank you. I'm going to start with really just the housing summit, and I'm going to start at just the high level. I think everyone gets a sense of the challenges ahead of us in terms of as we move through this, and tonight was a good example of that. So, but I'm just going to, as I say, really start at the high level in terms of some points that were said by some of the participants, that the new provincial housing plan is the biggest sweeping change to legislation that local government has had. The Housing Summit was an opportunity to hear more about the new bills and to give feedback to the province about the challenges municipalities of all sizes think they will face in implementing the new legislation. It was also interesting to see the similarities and learn about some of the successes of ways to move forward. The key challenges that I took away that were identified, number one is capacity. Many of the municipalities shared that they don't have the capacity to implement the legislation right now. Some municipalities don't even have a planner. Others are having challenges finding tradespeople and the professionals that go along with this. Others were concerned about what would have to come off the staff's work plan. For example, one municipality was working to integrate 7 OCP plans into one and felt this would now have to wait. Others felt that they had just finished updating their OCP plan and that they would have to crack it open again and start over. Funding was another big concern. More time and more funding will be needed to implement the changes required, and many municipalities were already feeling tapped out. On a wider scale, there is a shortage of planners. If contract planners are the option, it would be expensive and it would likely be a competition to find a planner. Saying all of this, overall, I would say that the general consensus was that something drastic had to be done, that the current system isn't working and that it needed to be turned upside down and shook up, leaving many people saying they would do what they can and will do their best with the resources they have. The second big challenge that was identified was infrastructure. Yes, we need more homes, but the infrastructure has to come with it. We need a stable and reliable source of funding for infrastructure upgrades and to ensure we have the appropriate healthcare, appropriate investment in our education system, and we need more transit. And there are things we don't know. One example was given. Say a small development with a fourplex is built in the wrong spot and it triggers a need for a massive infrastructure investment to actually facilitate this and ensure we have appropriate fire flows, etc. Essentially, the consensus was that we need a generational response from the federal government working with the provincial government and local government to deliver permanent infrastructure funding. Just a couple of additional comments that I thought were worth sharing from one of the mayors. The most glaring omission from the suite of legislation introduced is affordability. Increasing supply alone will not lead to affordability. For example, in Richmond, the mayor said that they are building 50% more housing than they have population growth, while the average price increased by 67%. In Nanaimo, 47% of the housing needs with housing plans and projects are for people who can't afford the private market. Minister Calone, I believe, addressed this, confirming that there will be legislation around rental project and inclusionary zoning, which will be introduced in the spring of 2024 legislation session. No further details were shared. With the move to increase gentle density through small multi-unit housing, the reality is that many people will be renting private dwellings. This means that we have to have a more efficient and effective residential tenancy branch so that the bad landlords and the bad tenants and the good tenants and the good landlords can all get access to speedy justice. Last food for thought. We are in this for the long game. This is all worth doing, not only because of the effect on supply, but as many of the units reach the end of their useful life, they are likely to be replaced with the less expensive, though nice, new units. Versus in many cases today where we see old one-unit structures being demolished and replaced with large one-unit structures, which are often more expensive. That's my report.
Well done.
And the details will definitely come from our planners. You know, they've been, I just want to say, they have been entrenched in this, I know, for a number of months, both, oh, where did he go?
Yeah.
He's hiding, he's under the table.
Nice.
But I just want to take my hats off to our planners because they are really, as I say, in the trenches, have a lot of information. Like, what was it that, something, what did he use? Oh, I forget the example our lawyer used. What was that?
The Don Lidstone referred to an atmospheric river of work coming our way in the next couple of months. So
Yeah.
we put on a brave face, but all the zoning changes that are happening by June, but you know.
Yeah, so I just want to say hats off. I know that, again, it really is an opportunity for us to look forward and look at what needs to come off work plans, or at least to look at, you know, where our strat plan fits and those kind of things. So we're all in this together, and we look to you for guidance, and we'll make it through
Thank
this.
Thank you,
Th-
Councillor
thank
Bell.
you.
Hard act to follow, but Councillor McLaughlin. Your microphone, Councillor McLaughlin, your microphone, please.
Thank you. Yes, I wanted to go to this conference, but I guess the time frame for signing up was short and funds were short apparently. But I did manage to pay for my own way and attended virtually, which was great actually, because saves hotel and transportation costs and lets more people go. But for me, this was a particularly important conference. For me, it was probably one of the most important ones of my life because it truly transformed city planning. And we're hoping density will help with the housing attainability, affordability, and accommodate 1 million people in BC over the next 8 years. Like, that's a huge challenge. What does it mean for Sechelt? Well, really the focus, I think, is for the most part, my impression was that it's in the major urban areas where immigrants want to be, in the Lower Mainland proper, and Kelowna primarily. The focus is on providing housing for families and immigrants, as I mentioned in some of my comments. We want to put the housing where there is infrastructure in areas with good area plans. That's something that came forward, which is something I've been asking for. And I think if you want to get infrastructure money, you have to show you have your ducks in a row and that you have thought it through and you've worked with the communities and you have a vision for that area for the future. And costing out these things is going to become critical. It's kind of like a moving target. Bonus density is a amenity contribution and affordable housing. I mean, that is just going to change. It's not going to happen anymore. It's going to be different. It probably wasn't really kosher in the first place, but it happened. So there were several bills, Bill 44, the one on small housing, which we talked about and dealt with today a little bit. That's small housing by definition. And Bill 46 on DCCs, and Bill 45 on community amenities, when they broadened the definition of that. So we have to plan more for that. So basically, those are the things I think that we have to focus on, and the insight I got, and I'm very excited about how it will help with sustainability and provide, you know, smaller housing units that we do need here. We have a lot of big homes, like I mentioned before, but we have to focus on, you know, if we're going to share our water, we want to share it with, in a very conservation kind of way, with housing provided to those service workers that we do need to come here. And so something they can either rent or afford to buy, if that's possible. Thank you. Another event I attended, which I just want to bring up, was the Rolling Stones were at the Legion this weekend, and it was a lot of fun. It was packed, sold 100 tickets online in advance. So considering the Legion is really run pretty much exclusively by volunteers and the quality of entertainment we had. I had ladies from Green Court that normally don't even get out of their wheelchairs were dancing. Lots of First Nations friends we had there. It was nice to see such a turnout.
Great.
So I do look forward to getting into the new Legion and continuing with this kind of fun activity in Sechelt. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I agree. It'll be labor of love for the Legion. Counselor Inkster.
Yeah, just a few things. There was an economic development presentation by Colin Stansfield at the Seaside Center on Monday, a week ago, I believe, last week, and it was good. It was with Chris Hergesheimer, so it was more of a, the community economic development, sort of the CED approach to local economic development and local purchasing and things like that. And I was going to suggest that Colin come and speak to us about his presentation. Maybe Chris will do it, represent, because there was some good information. I just wanted to mention other than that, because I thought it was a great presentation about local economic development, is a couple of quick things. I was on the Central Island last weekend, and guess what? They have large unhoused population, and guess what? They have an affordable housing problem. I just want to tell our community that it's not just Sechelt. And guess what? The Central Island, even though there's snow on the side hills and you can see snow coming back to the mainland on the hills up above us, there's signs everywhere that have 4 stages of water use over there. So guess what, everybody? We're all dealing with it. It's not just the regional district that couldn't plan for it, because there's 4 stages in a lot of communities because of climate change. And just the final issue was just a quick mention of what Councillor McLaughlin was mentioning about conferences. One of my frustrations this term is this: we really need a conference bank account for each council member. It's not a frivolous bank account. It's just we manage our own budgets within that account, and we choose to go to less of this conference and more of this, or choose this housing conference, or we choose this environment conference. And maybe we only go to half of ABICC or part of UBCM or both of those and maybe one other, but we need to manage our own so that we can make choices to go to things, so that a council member doesn't have to pull their money out of their own pocket to go see something on a subject area that's really important to our community. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Rowe.
The only thing I'm going to talk about is a housing subcommittee that I sit on, that came out of the work that Kelly Foley did last year with the housing needs data project that she did. So she developed 4 subgroups, one for workforce housing, one for children and families, one for the vulnerable population, one for seniors. So I sit on the vulnerable population one, and we've been meeting once every 3 months, and we've come together with the idea of putting together a proposal, if you will, on an area that we think would best serve that that population. So what we've decided to focus on is treatment and recovery. Sorry, my sweater is shedding. It's all in my mouth. So anyways, the reason I'm bringing this up today was because we just had a meeting, and we had a woman by the name of Brenda Plant, who's an executive director of one of the few licensed treatment and recovery nonprofits in BC called Turning Point. And she came to town and came to our last meeting and talked to us about how that whole system works, what sort of things they would be looking for to come to the Sunshine Coast and provide that kind of service, et cetera. It was very interesting, very informative. And so we are tightening up our meeting schedule, going to meet every other month, and we are looking to pull a proposal together that involves basically government, health authority, and nonprofit. That's what we see are the three key partners around making some inroads in this area. So that's very exciting and more to come. Very, very preliminary at this point. That's it.
Thank you. Counselor Shepherd.
We just had a meeting of the Airport Development Committee last night and heard from, I think, Councilor Inkster was asking, when is the plan coming forward? When are we going to hear about it? We should see a draft of the first master plan in about a month or so. Other than that, the committee's really concentrating on making use of the lights that have been installed at the airport. And thank you for Director Dillon for giving us an update on the tree trimming program, which has gotten a lot more complicated than anyone thought. Now, this is to make use of the lights. The trees have to be trimmed to allow safe landing and taking off at night. So actually, one of the committee members, and this will take up to 6 months to sort of sort out what is the most risk-averse way to do this that's also affordable. But one of the committee members suggested turning off some of the lights and using a certain segment of them, which can be done safely. So it was a great idea. It's just such an enthusiastic committee. It's a pleasure to work for. So we're going to follow up on that. I'll get the sort of breakdown on how that's going to be done sent through to Director Dillon, and we'll go from there. Thanks.
Yeah, I agree. Very dynamic committee and enthusiastic. Yeah. Counselor Toth.
Thank you. You guys are all a tough act to follow. I don't have a lot to report in the last couple of weeks. I did attend a community forest board meeting. The only thing really I have to report out of that right now is that they didn't actually finish the year with a lot of revenue. But the reason for that was that they had a fall harvest season that was quite bountiful, but their log sales didn't happen until January. So that's all revenue that's going to be recorded in 2024. Yeah, good group of people. They're very enthusiastic about what they do. And I think they're looking forward to coming to talk to us again soon. So I'll leave it there.
Okay, thanks. I guess one we heard today, I'm pleased, I think everybody on council has heard that the provinces dropped their proposed changes to the Land Act for at least for the time being. I think that's really important. Unfortunately, it doesn't appear that it is also dropping the dock management process. So there's some work, and I'm concerned about the friction that is in the community around that issue and how we deal with that in a productive way. I was in Ottawa last week, as council knows, and actually Councillor Shepherd went to Ottawa as well. If I can out you a little bit, but I got to sit through several meetings in a lovely sunny week in Ottawa. Temperatures were a low of -8, which is apparently quite warm. Met with the Department of Fisheries and Oceans again on derelict vessels. Minister of Immigration talking about the need for building trades and service workers to be available, and of course my meetings with GMF. I can share with the public now that it's been announced that the 2 billion tree program is launching, and there'll be considerable funding both for urban tree planting and rural, as well as a whole lot of other programs that are being rolled out. Got back on Saturday, very early Saturday morning, late Friday night, and had a wonderful time at a drive-in movie, which I haven't done for a very, very long time. And that was with the EV Association, and it was, we had about 40 people, and it was all nice. sitting in our warm cars and the windows up and the technology worked. Phew. So watch for one in the summer when maybe we'll have dinner first because the sun will be up. So sounds like all I'm doing is eating and drinking, but I was invited to join Tea with the Mountie today. And it's a great opportunity for those who want to, and the public in particular. Please make a point of coming out and seeing the police. They want to hear from you about how they're doing, what could they do better. And certainly they heard today concerns about the residents feeling unsafe, particularly in the downtown area. I can also say apparently we have challenges further afield from the downtown core. So I think we'll have to look at our security sweeps and where they are working. And last but most certainly not least, I want to congratulate our office otters. This was an intrepid group of 6 or 7 members of staff who joined with the Sunshine Coast Association for Community Living, the RCMP. A couple of officers went in full uniform, not the Red Surge, and no, not with their guns and tasers. And several other community groups in jumping into the ocean at Friendship Park in support of the Special Olympics next year. So, and they raised almost $5,000. So that was great. And I was so pleased to be only the unnominated photographer and not a participant. But they look very good in their Office Otter T-shirts, which I'm sure once they're washed will be hanging for next year's use. But well done, guys! You made us proud. So, and I'm sure 1 or 2 of the executive will recover eventually. But, on that note, council, I will entertain a motion to adjourn, and seconded. All in favor? We are adjourned. Questions?